I've been thinking a lot about this induction stuff, and it's really complicated. I don't pretend to know what I'm talking about. I just sort of talk about it. I was trying to draw a connection between induction and technology, because when science applies itself to building systems and machines and computers or whatever, it's relying on the fact that nature, at least as artificially constructed by our engineering minds, will obey particular habits, which, because they are so regular, we can actually build material objects which will perform complex tasks with a high degree of fidelity. My car runs because a certain amount of gasoline will combust and create a certain amount of pressure when it's contained in a certain amount of space. And that happens over and over and over and over and over again, a couple thousand times a second. And that's why it's useful to assume that one thing leads to another. That's why we can draw that connection where in our experience none really exists, or at least beyond our experience none really exists. It's there in our experience because it happens repeatedly, but it's a habit of nature. Now, the problem here is that when we think of nature in this way, sometimes we draw the erroneous conclusion that these habits are laws that can never be contradicted or disobeyed. We think of them as these cosmic commands from, maybe not a god, but some aspect of existence that is just built in at the bottom level, which can't be questioned or has to be assumed for anything else to make sense. They're just habits, though. Novelty is still possible. The future is fundamentally unpredictable because, emergence is, always a possibility. Something new can arise out of what before were just separate parts. It can happen all at once, and the types of things that become possible that nature can do, we know what it has done, at least, for the most part. Certainly there are possibilities of nature which we just haven't recognized in the fossil record, or the ability of our biochemists to run the planetary clock back and understand what the atmosphere was like hundreds of millions of years ago, and so on. There are possibilities that our methods may be missing, but we have at least some idea of what nature is capable of. And so we can build models and make predictions that are somewhat reliable when the conditions that those predictions are supposed to be true under are held. Of course, they are useful because they predict accurately, and we can use them to build sophisticated machines that, in a sense, are getting nature to perform a task based on certain conditions, based on a certain design. The shape and function and mechanism of an engine is metal, just a natural element, and gasoline put into a certain situation such that the activity of where the energy of all the horsepower required to drive a car is produced repeatedly, and it breaks down, certainly, but you repair it. And but this fundamental activity, when the car is working as it should, only works because these habits are evident. They're just there. The problem is when we demand certainty of induction, we're always at a loss, because we want these eternal laws that just tell us how nature behaves at all times in all places, when it's just those laws aren't there. Nature is this evolving process. Knowledge is this evolving process. It's never finished or complete. Maybe you can say it's making progress, but not to anywhere in particular. So what we're really doing when we induce is we're recognizing a particular pattern which has occurred repeatedly in the past and projecting it into the future, because we are temporal beings. We're not making a certain conclusion about an underlying causal mechanism. We're maybe building a model based on an assumption like that, but it's always a theory which can only be proven wrong. You can never prove it true. So build as many models as you'd like, you can never prove them true. You can only defend them from criticisms. And you can never prove that other theories couldn't satisfy the same evidence which your theory relies upon, or is based on. So induction is not a problem if we don't require certainty. Basically, if we know that there are no natural laws, that those are always constructs of our minds, that in fact the activity of nature is always changing, its fundamental structure, or whatever that means, is always evolving, and we can't predict exactly what's going to happen. We can project a model, but we'll never know if it's the truth until it actually happens. And so often, science is at a loss to predict more global activities of the natural world. Think of our ability to predict the climate. It sucks. We have no idea what's going on. The last 3 years down in Florida, 3 or 4 years even, they've been predicting a huge hurricane season, like 25 storms or whatever, and we haven't had a single storm the last 3 years. So I don't know what, the computer models are just not that accurate, I guess. It's very difficult to predict how nature will behave at such a complex level as the climate. Just like it's difficult to predict how an individual person will behave. We're just these naturally evolved material processes too. Just like other machines, nature is only able to evolve because it follows particular habits. It builds up genetic codes, Nature conserves. It remembers. So induction is just, the corollary of memory, because memory is only useful to project into the future. So no problem. There's no problem of induction if we are not in need of certain knowledge. If knowledge is an intersubjective activity, there's no problem.